Hello, Hornet Land. Welcome to episode 18 of the Hornet Cast. And our episode today is going to focus on our values and a learner profile to be revealed. And I have a special guest with me today, our Deputy Director at CAG, Tracy Berry Lasso, I've been at CAG, this is my third year. There's a 3 next to your years that you've been here also, but it's a little bit different in place value.
A little bit.
How long have you been here,
30
Tracy?
years.
30 years. So that's pretty exciting.
Yes.
30 years, 3 decades
Yes.
of your life has been spent at CAG, which means that Tracy knows a lot of the history of our mission, our vision, our foundational values that have been over the course of those 3 decades. And today we're going to talk about some of the values and learner profiles that we've had in the past decade. And we're going to talk about an exciting new learner profile that we'll be revealing to the community today. So pretty cool, right?
It's awesome.
Okay. So our mission and our vision are pretty clear, and they've been around for at least 10 years, right?
And then some, yes.
And then some. And so if you look at the mission and the vision, the mission is to empower students to achieve their full potential and inspire them to lead meaningful lives as responsible members of a global society. And then we go to the mission, and it also says a legacy of meaningful lives. I think there's a theme there that brings value to Guatemalan and global communities. So we see meaningful lives in our mission and our vision. So why do we see that phrase? Why is that phrase so important?
That concept of leading a life that's fulfilled with purpose beyond oneself is a theme that has resonated in the CAG community for decades. It also aligns very much to the purpose and the direction of our foundation. And it's very much about how do we embed in all of our students that commitment to not only making the best for themselves, but in doing so, having that opportunity to benefit others.
Yeah, we have a Meaningful Lives Fair every year in high school. And the purpose of that fair is to do that, right? Is to connect kids to the community, to service beyond self.
Absolutely.
So they're able to find a project, they're able to work with maybe a nonprofit or to work with a school or to work with an organization to give back, right? And so I think that that's something that we want, and we don't want just meaningful lives when kids are at CAG. We want when they graduate and wherever they go and whatever they do, we want them to live a meaningful life, right? So that's kind of the core of who we are at CAG. 10 years ago, there was a learner profile. Douglas Atkins was the director, and the learner profile that started 10 years ago was called VITAS. All right, so on your screen, you're going to see a document with VITAS on it. VITAS stands for what, Tracy? You could not look at the document. You could tell us. I might have to look at the document.
So VITAS, which is an acronym for words and concepts in English. Mm-hmm. The V stands for values oriented. I is innovative. D, dynamic. A, actively engaged. And S for service driven.
So that was our learner profile. And of course, under that learner profile, we had some characteristics of what that looks like and what we would like to see in our students as they progress and as they create meaningful lives along with us working with them, families and CAG. Really, the meaningful life is them looking at opportunities to grow themselves, but it's also the community that surrounds them, kind of wrapping them up and saying, here are values that are important to you. Here are things that are important. Mm-hmm. So with that being said, values, this is something when I got here in 2023, I looked at different documents and I found all kinds of documents that listed values that we have at CAG. I found some in the family handbook. I found some in policy. I found some from FUVG. Mm-hmm. I found some from documents that were internal documents. Altogether, I think I found 6 different sets of values. And we started saying, okay, that's a lot of values, and some of them are crossovers, right? They're the same. but some of them are different. And so we started to have conversations about values in 2023. And of course, that's the same time that FUVG was developing their values.
Mm-hmm.
And we're a part of the foundation. It's an important base of who we are is to embrace those values.
Mm-hmm.
So you can see on the graphic in front of you what those values are. And those are the icons that you see there. So we have confianza, we have innovación y emprendimiento, we have pensamiento crítico, we have compromiso, and then there's two values that are also shared with values that we developed that were more simple in their nature and language at CAG in 2024, which are our 4Bs. And so those two values that are crossovers between the FUVG values and the CAG values are ser respetuoso, or be respectful, and ser responsable, or be responsible. And then we added be kind and be safe, because those are super important. And of course, in our school and our community, the 4Bs are super important. I've talked to parents about the 4Bs in relation to ASCA tournaments. I've talked to kids about the 4Bs on a daily basis. Teachers, we all need to live the 4Bs. We could all use a little more kindness in life, right?
Yes.
A little more respect in a polarized world. And so we have those, but we also are really glad that being respectful and being responsible are values across our foundation. And then we embrace the other values too that you see in the icons. So that's kind of a little history lesson of how we came to the values that we have that are really the foundation of everything we do at CAG. But also some work began in 2020 timeframe during that, I don't know, that thing that happened in the world. What was that called again? The pandemic, right? Yes. We started talking about really what does learning look like? Right. Like what would be our definition of learning at CAG? I was not here. You were a big part of, you were in the middle of that, I'm imagining. Tell us a little bit about that process and what was the result.
So our process began with a challenge from our international accrediting agency, the New England Association of Schools and Colleges. And it was very timely, as you mentioned, because of the pandemic. And so we obviously had to use some creative measures to be able to generate this. But we worked with our entire faculty at the time. And we talked about what are some of the aspects that we feel would make us very proud of this unique learning experience and its outcomes at CAG. And we generated a series of statements that then we blended together and synthesized and then vetted with our faculty so that we could agree on one statement, and then sharing it and vetting it with our board of directors as well. And then we were able to roll out what was at that time what we called CAG's aspirational definition of learning. Not that we were living it 100% just yet, but it's the work that we're trying to do to eventually achieve and accomplish what that vision is.
We're aspiring to that.
We are aspiring to.
But it doesn't happen overnight.
Oh, no, it's a time-consuming process.
Okay. So in 2021, our definition of learning was adopted officially with NEASC, with accreditation, and with our school. And we started to do the work of saying, how can we live this definition of learning? And that's interesting because that was 5 years after VITA started. And as we started to look at VITAS and look at our definition of learning, we ended up in 2024 at a leadership conference, and you and I were there along with the principals, and we started to have discussions about, okay, definition of learning, our learner profile, VITAS, are they matching? Is it really what do our kids need more to live a meaningful life? Do they need something different to live a meaningful life? Do they need some of the same, and do they need, an enhancement? And we, at that workshop that we went to, we were able to learn about learner profile from another international school that was very simple, straightforward, and made us think maybe our VITAS doesn't align with our definition of learning. And so we started workshopping and saying, what do we need to do here? how can we really capture what a meaningful life looks like for a CAG student or a CAG alumni?
And especially thinking about the future and its demands in a world that even now is characterized by being impacted by AI and other resources. And so, how do we look forward and be inspired to what the future will demand of our learners, and then backwards design that learner profile accordingly?
It just goes like this a little
Yeah,
bit with all the AI and all the changes in the world and how rapidly the changes are happening. So maybe Tracy, maybe you could read the definition of learning so that, and if you want to stop and pause in parts because you have all the context,
sure.
you can say, man, this phrase was really important to us. We really had to grapple with this, and it was really important that we used this particular word. Then
Sure,
go ahead.
sure. So, learning at CAG is a dynamic and iterative process which engages learners in authentic experiences that further develop their unique values, voice, and purpose. A couple of key ideas here. First of all, dynamic and iterative. That's not necessarily understood by everyone, but we really felt as a collective faculty that we needed to include those qualifiers. Iterative being that aspect of reflecting upon one's learning and modifying along the way, that we think is something that's so crucial to the experience of all of our learners, not just our students,
Right.
but also our
We're all
educators
learners,
and
right?
our leaders who are
Right.
crafting experiences for our students. Furthermore, we believe that that aspect about developing students' unique values, voice, and purpose speaks to the student centeredness of CAG.
Mm-hmm.
It truly values every individual, and we want to continuously provide opportunities for the students to be able to use their voice to inform the decisions that we make at the school. The students ultimately are the drivers of our program. And we go on to talking about more of that in the next sentence. In a physically, socially, and emotionally safe environment, learners are empowered to be the co designers and co creators of their own learning as they collaborate, innovate, and act ethically and empathetically to make an impact on an ever changing world. We've got a couple of really key concepts included there. Specifically, the physically, socially, and emotionally safe environment. Certainly, the pandemic was an opportunity for us to reflect on the needs of student well being in so many aspects of it. And so we wanted to be sure those concepts were underscored in that definition of learning. Furthermore, as we talk about student empowerment, that students are the co-designers and co-creators of their own learning, we feel that that's absolutely central to the CAG experience. And then furthermore, as students are collaborating and innovating, that's speaking more to those 21st, but now 21st century skills is really passe. But
Durable
the
skills.
durable skills that will last
Yeah.
them, they're transferable across decades, across
Right.
centuries, if you will. And then, of course, acting ethically and empathetically. I laugh a little bit about that sometimes because while it's absolutely critical at the time it was, we had no idea then that with the advent of AI, how very central that would become to the conversation. So when I think about acting ethically and empathetically, I see that those are timeless qualities that we're proud that are a part of this. But it's not just about acting in the moment, it's about preparing these students to make that impact on an ever changing world so that their learning is transferable across contexts.
So it is aspirational.
Indeed.
We're still trying to get there. Some of these are very long-term projects. When you talk about co-designing and co-learning with the students being at the center of their own learning, there's a lot of transitions that have to take place from a traditional education that maybe some of our parents and grandparents that are listening to this Hornetcast, if there's 11 of my followers that are watching that happen to be in that category, you had a certain education when you were at CAG where maybe it was more of the sage on the stage, where a teacher was in the front, the teacher taught, the students learned, the students took the test, showed that they had learned the material. And really, it was teacher centric. The teacher was really at the middle of what school is, right? This new model of education in our aspirational definition of learning is really that the student's at the center of their learning. which can be a big change for maybe a teacher that's been here for 30 years and maybe taught some of you out there that are parents, right? And you were here 30 years ago and
Yes.
you were a young teacher.
Yes.
And I imagine that a lot of your colleagues taught more in that way.
Mhm.
It wasn't necessarily a focus on there's the student, and the student is the center of their learning, and then we support them so that they can grow and learn and thrive. So that's been a big change in philosophy. It's just the way, even the way you organize your classroom,
Oh, yes.
right? Before it used to be rows of desk, right? And now we know that students don't necessarily all like to work in that way, but some do. Some need a separate spot and work better alone. But many of our students are very social,
Oh,
and
yes.
they work better together in groups. They learn from each other, along with their teacher, along with AI, along with their literacy skills and reading and trying to research and grow and discover, right? And so we've been working on that process. And as we started talking about this at that leadership conference in a couple of years ago, right? Um, we decided we need to go back and start working with our community to reframe our learner profile. So do you want to talk a little bit about that process?
Absolutely. So in February of 2025, we dedicated some professional development time with our faculty members to challenge them to examine examples in society in a variety of different areas to be able to identify what are some skills that we're seeing across areas that we feel our students need to be able to be prepared for the future. And they really did an extraordinary job of exploring different resources. World Economic Forum, for example, was one of
Right.
the sources that they looked at, and they began to generate a list. In our second session, we were able to synthesize those ideas around some common concepts that we then took as a leadership team and began to craft. And that has taken us some time because each
Like a
time
year.
that we revisit it, we come up with another concept. And I think
Sure.
that's very natural in an iterative process
Sure.
because we're gaining clarity and understanding about what these qualities need to be. And so finally in
today,
March of
right now,
2026,
as you're watching this video,
we're thrilled to be able to roll out our next iteration of our learner profile.
so you're going to see that on the screen in front of you right now, that we came up with 5 different areas or qualities that we really want our learners to have. And when we talk about learners, we talked about it earlier. It's not just our students. It's us. It's each of us. Parents, right? Teachers, administrators, and our kids, of course, our students. We're all learners. We're all trying to grow. We're all trying to make sense of this world that's growing around us exponentially in AI and other types of technological advances, right? And so these are the things that we feel like align with our values, and that we want our kids to be able to have these skill sets. We want them to be great experts in these areas so that wherever they go and whatever they do, these things are applicable. They're going to have the skills to live a meaningful life, right? So should we go through these areas?
Let's do it.
Okay, why don't you start?
So our first one is being a collaborative connector, in that learners work as co-designers and co-creators of their own learning journey.
I heard that somewhere. Where did that come from?
Yes. Now
Definition of
you're
learning.
beginning to see
Okay.
the relevance and the
Good.
connection. And that they're embracing service beyond self. So that concept of collaboration, but also even harnessing that often social nature of our learners, because we know that learning is a social endeavor.
Right.
And so seeing how to use these qualities in a way that not only serve the individual, but in including that aspect about service beyond self, it's that making that outward impact in a positive manner.
We had a think tank in October, and Kevin Mattingly, Dr. Kevin Mattingly from Columbia University, was there as a thought partner. And I remembered that in his group, the student that was in his group especially, they talked about this concept of service beyond self.
Yes.
That your life is not meaningful if you're just about selfishness and doing everything for you. It's only becomes meaningful when you do something that's beyond yourself, something for someone else.
Yes.
And so I think a collaborative connector does that, right? They make connections. They see maybe a challenge. They work with people to overcome that challenge. They maybe serve other people. They listen. So valuable skills that would be valuable in university or any job or career that you're going to go into, and in life in
And in
general.
your personal relationships as well. Yes.
We have here bilingual communicator, and that's something that's the essence of our value proposition at CAG. That's why a lot of the maybe embassy families and other international families send their kids to CAG, because we believe that Spanish and English are both critical and that we all want to be bilingual. When our teachers come here that don't speak Spanish, what do? Put them in a Spanish
That's
class,
right.
right? And we put them in activities like Amazing Race with Spanish speaking Guatemalans. And we say, you
Full
got to speak
immersion.
Spanish and
Yes.
you got to be with the team and you
Yeah.
got to figure out how to communicate, because we really feel like being bilingual not only helps you with your brain processing and your brain development, but it also helps you be more communicative in a world where English and Spanish are very important languages that are spoken across many different cultures and
Mhm.
countries.
Well, and look at our college fair that we had this week.
Great example.
And universities from all over the world. And ultimately, this component of bilingual communication, it's there for the purpose of supporting our students as they are pursuing opportunities beyond CAG. And when you see this wide array of universities represented, and our students speaking with the representatives from admissions and seeing that they truly are on a pathway to being prepared, no matter where it is in the world, but largely in part to their communication skills.
Awesome. So let's talk about another one. Tracy, what's another quality that we want?
Purposeful leader, a person who is empowered to lead a meaningful life as a responsible global citizen. Here we're seeing crossover with our definition of learning, with our mission, with our vision at CAG as well. But that concept that there is embedded within it a sense of responsibility, a sense of meaning and purpose and direction. We recognize that being a leader can happen in a wide array of manners. And we want all of our students through their process of self-discovery at CAG to identify in what ways they can become leaders.
Exactly. As a leader, you often have to solve problems. So that's a quality that we want all of our community to have also, is to be problem solvers. Is something that we think, yes, this is important, but then sometimes we go back to a past history with our own educational experiences, and we forget that if we don't give our kids opportunities to fail, to make mistakes, to grapple with something that's difficult for them to understand, that they won't develop problem solving skills. And I'll use mathematics as an example, because a lot of people talk about math and math at CAG. But ultimately, what we're seeing with our students is they want to be given the answers. They don't want to problem solve unless they're getting the right answer on the first try. They don't want to think about what they're doing. They just want to do the math and check it off. But that's not what really math is. Math is a process of thinking and problem solving. And so we actually want teachers to challenge our kids to think for themselves and to go through a process. And that's a different type of teaching than just getting up on the old whiteboard, chalkboard, and writing out the answers and saying, okay, I got the right answer, so I know how to do math. Yeah. It's really the process of thinking and working through something conceptually and coming up with solutions that we want for our kids.
Well, and you know, our middle school parents engaged in the book study of The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt. And part of
Great
that
book.
work talks about the need for society to allow students to take calculated risks. It's structured kind of risk taking,
Sure.
but you cannot become a problem solver unless you've been exposed to particular kinds of just putting yourself out there and
Right.
taking that risk and dealing with the ambiguity and trying different ways and iterating on your particular solution ideas.
Exactly.
And so really when we think about it in that partnership from home and the school, there are ways that all of us can support the development of that particular quality.
Yeah. We had Trixie Valle here who wrote the book Niños de Algodón
Hijos de cristal.
yeah,
Ajá.
Niños de Cristal,
Ajá.
and we wrapped them in algodón, and
Ajá. Sí, padres de
so
algodón,
we
hijos de
put
cristal.
we put these kids and we do everything for them, and we don't let them take risk, and we don't let them fall down. We don't let them get back up and try to figure it out. And so that speaks to the last one. What is the last one?
One of my favorites, resilient individual, a person who engages in dynamic learning, embracing failure as a valued part of growth. That's how you create risk taking.
Exactly. So that's what we want for our students, for ourselves as a community at CAG. This is the new learner profile.
And the beauty of this particular one is that the learner profile is not in isolation as it had been in the past. Now it's embedded within our 4Bs, within our mission, our vision, but also the wraparound of the Grupo Educativo de Valles Valores.
Exactly. And one last thought to leave the community with is that we are in the midst of our master facilities plan. And the new middle school is operational. The kids are in it. They're doing these types of things. Like they made chairs out of cardboard last week, right? They're doing some pretty incredible things. They're solving problems. They're learning how to make robotics trucks that pull heavy things and trying to look at the physics of that. And so our new innovation center will begin this December. And it will have a lot of these qualities. And it won't be education like you and I went to when we were younger. It will be education where it revolves around the students, their passion projects, the things they're interested in, the things they aspire to. And there'll be a lot more project and mentorship support time in that innovation center than traditional classes. There will be traditional work sessions and learning sessions, but they'll be a lot shorter and there'll be more time for projects. So
true hands-on learning and experimentation in those spaces.
exactly. So we got to finish with our Go Hornets on the count of 3. 1, 2, 3.
Go Hornets!